This is real adult tips, guys.
I'm in the big leagues, told her don't miss me. Ballin' like Houston, ayy, feeling like Whitney. I need a bag, bruh, send it through quickly. I'm making his dog, like I'm in the big leagues. Told him that I gotta go, dog.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Said Connects, Cannabis Entrepreneurial Dialogues. I'm your host, Danny. Our mission is to create spaces for people of color, brands of color, and minorities in the space to educate and empower our communities through storytelling and representation. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, make sure you do so at Said Connects, CED Connects, and follow us on Instagram at CED_Connects for all the live updates, episodes. We push out new episodes every Mondays at 4:20. So for today's episode, we have a great one. We have Kendra in the building, who has an amazing story within the industry. She's been in the extreme sports world. She started off with a few brands that we'll definitely talk about. She's a mother. She's a partner. She has a husband. So there's a lot to unpack in this episode. And so I'm excited to have you. Thank you for coming through, Kendra. How are you today?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here right now. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've seen a lot of your content, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through Instagram. And so I'm just like, I've been excited. And one of the things that we've been really wanting to push is having more women on our episodes. So thank you again for just coming through. And I'm really excited to learn more, because as we kind of talked about before, like yesterday, we've kind of came through similar upbringings within our career in cannabis. And so I'd love to hear like your take on just how things happen. But before we do, with every episode, we want to learn more about you, your upbringing, and what was the messaging behind cannabis like in your household growing up?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I am half Mexican. My dad came over the border when he was super young. My parents met and got married and had me. I was firstborn kid. And really interestingly, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh.
So cannabis wasn't something that was used. It wasn't part of our lives early in life.
Okay.
Although my dad does tell me stories of growing weed in his backyard when he came to the States.
Okay.
So there's like a little something there, you know what I mean?
Right.
And he's always been into and still is into like alternative medicine. So, it was not something I did when I was younger. There was no cannabis. We didn't talk about it. It wasn't like that. But then as we got older, my sister she got diagnosed with leukemia. A few years in, she had a spinal tap.
How old was she?
She was 9 when she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm 2.5 years older than her.
Okay.
And then in her last bout of chemo, where they did the spinal tap, where they put chemotherapy in your spine, a couple weeks after that, she started losing the ability to walk. So ever since then, so she was about 12, so I was around 15 or so.
Yeah.
And she stopped walking, which was crazy. They went through all sorts of things trying to figure out what was wrong. And then it wasn't until my parents actually ended up getting a divorce. I never got really into being a Jehovah's Witness, so I was never like baptized into it. So when my parents divorced, it was like, oh, this makes sense. Like I'm going with my mom. My mom fell out of it. So me and my mom and my sister moved out to the desert. We were out in Palmdale for a few years.
Okay.
And that's when cannabis really started coming into our lives. I was, prior to that, I was smoking weed with like my high school boyfriends and stuff like that. Right. But just very like, I'm at a high school party or something and like, smoking weed. I think I started smoking weed when I was like 14 or 15. But, my parents were busy with my sister, and I wasn't causing too much trouble. I was hanging out with people smoking weed.
And where was this out in Lancaster, Palmdale, or this is in?
So this was before. I grew up in Santa Clarita.
Got you.
So I should say before I moved out, before my parents got divorced.
Yeah.
I was in Santa Clarita.
You guys were in Santa Clarita.
Yes.
Got you.
And I was running around smoking weed, but not causing too much trouble. I was just smoking weed.
Right,
drinking. Normal 14, 15, 16.
Is that the normal? Because I have a 14-year-old now, and I'm
like,
no, you know what? It's true, and like I have conversations with my 14-year-old now about it, just because of how I grew up, right? How we all, all the stories that I get, even just from folks coming on the show. But it's reality, right? And my thing with that, and we'll touch on parenting, right? But my thing with that is just, as long as we have an honest conversation with her, and she knows, because obviously she knows what I do. She knows that I'm in the business. There's flour all over my house, so it's there, it's available. But we just have those honest conversations and kind of go from it. But but back then, obviously, it wasn't.
It was a little different.
Right.
And growing up in the valley, it was so accessible. You know what I mean? Like I was just like 10 minutes from the valley, living in Santa Clarita, so it was like easy. Everybody had I don't know. It was probably too easy to get.
Right.
So that's why that was like that.
Okay. And did your sister start consuming, or like around that time frame, or was it later on after?
I want to say she started once we moved to Palmdale, because again, she's 2.5 years younger than me. So once we moved out there, I think her was like freshly 18, so she was like 16 or something like that, and she was already settled. We knew that she wasn't going to be walking. She's in a wheelchair, and so she started using it like with my friends I got a job at a skate shop, so at Pharmacy Board Shop out there in Palmdale. Okay. Holler, love you guys.
There you go. They still around?
They're still around.
Okay, cool.
They're crushing it, actually.
Nice. Shout out to y'all.
Victorville. There's one in Long Beach, Hollywood. They're all over the place.
Oh, dang.
Really good
nice.
people. Yeah.
All right.
So I worked there, and so we started got into this skate crowd, which was a lot of fun. And my sister was hanging out with me too. So yeah, she started smoking weed kind of as she was at that age.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay. So do you know how to do a kickflip?
No, I can't. I am 35 years old.
Well, back then.
No, I can put together a skateboard at the drop of a hat. I still can to this day. I can roll around a little bit. Yeah, I could do some ollies and some other stuff. But we used to joke all the time when I worked at the shop. They would be like, there was a spot in Palmdale called S Gap. It was on the S Street out there.
Avenue S.
Avenue
like that.
S, yeah. And so people always used to joke around, oh, Kendra can tray flip S Gap. And I was like, yeah. But no, I can't do that.
Nah,
but it was fun.
I know that was a big thing. At least I remember back then, my brothers were also into the whole skating scene. I can't ride a skateboard to save my life.
The beautiful thing about skateboarding, and I was a big snowboarder, still am to this day. I snowboard, I'll rip a snow. I love snowboarding. That's my thing, right? So it worked out for me there because I understood being on a board and doing all sorts of fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about skateboarding is that it's not just being able to ride a deck, ride a board and be able to do tricks. It's very much a culture and a lifestyle. And that's what kind of drove me into the cannabis thing, because it's the same sort of feeling. It's a lot of kids who are rebellious.
Right.
They want to live on their own terms. They don't want to go to football practice with the rest of their friends. They would rather grab a board and go do some tricks in the wherever, at the park or whatever, hang out with their friends. It's a lifestyle. So it's a beautiful culture, and that's why I loved it. It was just a little bit alternative. It was a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned you started working at a skate shop. Mm-hmm. Was that the beginnings of your career in sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to FITM. I went to a fashion school in downtown LA, and I loved snowboarding. Really thought that I wanted to be a product developer, actually.
Okay.
So I got my degree in product development from there. Really good with tech packs. I don't know if anybody knows what that is.
What is it?
Building clothing piece by piece. So it's not design where you would just draw a piece of clothing. It's when you look at your shirt, it's every single piece, there's a panel, right? It's building the clothing. So it's a little bit more operational, sort of, the pieces you're sticking together.
Okay.
So I really wanted to do that. So I thought I was going to do that. I actually interned at Volcom for a few months, which was super fun. But I was really good at selling stuff at the shop. I was good at it. I was like, yo, what are you looking for? Let me help you out. And I would take every single customer. And so some of the outside sales reps noticed me because they would come into the skate shop and they were like, hey, what's up? What do you, who's your best girl, whatever. And so the main rep for DC Shoes, he was looking for a female to do the apparel and the kids' clothing. And I was like, yeah, I'll come on board. I ended up working with him and two other dudes. It was called the A-Team Agency for 8 years. Like I stayed there for a really long time.
Damn.
I loved this crew so much.
Yeah.
They used to take us out to like Breckenridge, and we go snowboarding at Ken Block's house out in Utah. And we would I'd be hobnobbing it with all of our skaters.
Steven over here, you just hit a nerve on Steven back there. Like, what?
It was legit. I mean, why would I leave? You know,
Yeah.
it was so much fun. We got another brand. We got Skull Candy, if you remember the headphones.
Right, yeah.
It's actually how I met my husband. He was working in marketing at Skull Candy in
Oh,
Park
nice.
City.
I just bought some. Well, I didn't. My partner bought some for me. She got them at Costco, and Costco everything in my life right now. I'm there in my life. Costco everything.
My mom works at Costco.
Oh,
so
nice.
Same.
Gotcha. Which one?
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. All right, I'm gonna go check out.
She's super nice. That's funny.
But okay, so so your husband worked at Skull Candy.
Yeah.
Got you.
So
Okay.
that's how we met. We actually met at a trade show in San Diego, which is funny. It was ASR, which doesn't exist anymore, which is sad, but it's fine. And then, I kept doing that for a long time. And then Quicksilver hit a hard spot in 2014. And my boss, I got laid off. It was like, I don't want to lose you. You've been with us for such a long time, but I can't keep doing this kind of a thing. So got laid off, which I was bummed about. I ended up somehow thinking if I can sell skateboards to picky ass dudes, I can sell houses.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Typical saleswoman to my core.
Yeah.
So I got my real estate license, tried out residential for about a year and a half or so.
So this is 2015 now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then decided that the ups and downs of that were tough. And I was like, let me try a commercial.
And it's completely different, right? Like from the sales that you were doing? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very relationship based, right? Before versus.
I mean, everything. Skate is also very relationship based, but when you're working with a family for their first time buying a home, emotions are wild. I mean, you're on a roller coaster with this family, right? Of maybe maybe it'll get denied, maybe it'll get approved, maybe they'll get their offer. This is crazy. Okay, we have to spend all this money for home inspections, all this stuff. And so I was really excited. I helped a handful of families and it was super fun.
Yeah.
But I needed something more consistent. I had just had my second kid.
Okay.
So my little baby girl, I mean, she was 2 weeks old and I was nursing her, throwing her off to my husband and going and showing homes.
Yeah.
And I was I just need something I've got 2 kids now. I have to have real income coming in really consistently. So I took a job as an assistant at a commercial real estate brokerage.
Okay.
And that was okay, but it was so regimented. It was me in a pencil skirt and heels. And I was this doesn't feel the way that I want it to.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to wear
tough.
pencil skirts either.
Yeah, a little constricting.
Yeah.
But then I was you know what? I've always loved weed. We grew weed back in the day at my, we had a place. We moved around a little bit, but so we did live back in Palmdale for a hot minute when I was doing residential.
Okay.
And so we had to grow in the backyard. I think we had about 11 plants. And we've just always used weed.
What was that experience like?
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. My sister's boyfriend at the time, they're married now, but he was really good at figuring out the nutrient part of things.
Okay.
Which was great to have somebody that's dedicated to that part of it, because I was very overwhelmed by it. And our plants got big, really big. To the point where our neighbor, when we had finally got time to chop it all down, he was like, what happened? They were coming over the side, and he was worried for us.
Oh, gotcha.
He's what happened to all your plants? And we're it's time, my guy. But it was a lot. At one point I remember I was working and all of a sudden a hailstorm, random hailstorm happened and all the plants were outside. We had them in these buckets with these rollers so we can move them around.
Okay.
And it started hailing and they were pretty far along and we were so my sister's at home, so she was living with me.
Yeah.
And she's like, Ken, these plants are going to get destroyed right now. So I rushed back home.
Yeah.
My sister's in a wheelchair.
Right. What can she do?
Yeah. She's and I'm like, oh shit. And I rush home and I'm in the backyard. It's hailing and I'm hauling these big ass plants underneath. Thankfully we had a patio cover in the back.
Right.
So I was pulling them all underneath the patio cover. We were able to salvage most of it, thankfully.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What was because, you know, paint the picture for those. Palmdale is the desert.
Yeah.
Right? How was it, like, just climate control, and like how were you guys able to, if you remember, like how were you guys able to like keep that going?
So the plants, when they were small, we had a garage grow.
Okay.
So they started off as like an indoor garage thing with like lights and bakery racks and things.
Yeah.
So when they were pretty controlled, right? We had lights on them. We had little AC if we needed it and things like that. It actually worked out okay.
Yeah.
Then when they got large enough, that's when we pulled them outside. And for whatever reason, it was okay. We kept them watered. The weed was actually pretty good, all things said and done. Like maybe now I wouldn't think that. My palate's opened a little bit more. But at the time it was like, I don't know how we made it work out, but they never got too hot. I think if the sun started beating on them, we would start pulling them underneath again or something like that. I forget what we did, but it worked out. And it was fun. We had a ton of weed after, 11 plants, and, probably 70% of it got through that hailstorm.
Nice. That's crazy. I don't think I can. Like, I could barely keep the house plants at home alive. Which, by the way, if you buy your plants at Home Depot, I don't know if you know this, but if you buy your plants at Home Depot and if they do die, you can always take them back, and you can exchange them for a brand new plant.
I just had a plant die.
Yeah, if you have the receipt or if you use the card or whatever, go take the plant back, and you can exchange it out for a brand new plant.
This is real adult tips, guys.
It's Home Depot.
Dang, okay.
Yeah, my partner does it all the time.
That's great.
Because I make those plants die, not her, me.
We all can't have green thumbs.
Right. But okay, so we're real estate now, and you're thinking about making a switch. Mm-hmm. When is that? How does cannabis then even come into the realm of this is the direction I want to go?
So, I've again always have smoked weed, grown weed, like it around.
Yeah.
And I watch politics fairly closely.
Okay.
I knew what was going on with 64. And prior to that, I didn't get into it because, it's worrisome, especially when you're a parent. You're like, I cannot get caught up in some nonsense with kids. Like I felt a little bit nervous about jumping into it, but there was something about 64 passing where I felt much more comfortable.
Sure.
And I was like, look, my sales skills are super transferable. Like, I understand what cannabis is. I understand, the similarities between skateboarding and cannabis. And, the thing that I've always said is in skate, people who have shops put their blood, sweat, and tears into these stores.
Yeah.
And people in cannabis put their blood, sweat, tears, and jail time a lot of the times into it. So coming into this, I was like, you know what? I can respect amazing, like what these guys are doing. Like, I came into it from sort of the medical perspective.
Sure.
My sister used it.
Yeah.
We have a very dear friend who she ended up actually passing away at a very young age. I believe she was 26 from stage 4 breast cancer. And so we were making all sorts of concoctions for her at the house as well, between coconut oils and edibles and all sorts of things. And so I came into it as like this medical background. My husband's the biggest stoner that I actually know, even to this day. So weed is like, it was like a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel comfortable with this. Like, I could sell weed, I could run around, so I literally just threw a resume together and I started sending it to every Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever, like cannabis postings that there were, and ended up getting a call back from a handful of them, and then ultimately taking a position with a smaller distro that was SoCal based only, called C4, which is not in existence anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of what happened. And it was really interesting coming into that because it was early. I mean, I started I think my first day on the job was like January 2nd, 2018.
All right.
So it was like, as soon as everything had become rec, I was with this company. The distro didn't have their license yet. So their license didn't come online until like the end of March, 2018. So we had like a couple weeks of training. And then it was like, okay, here, go get your medical recommendation. And here's a list of a bunch of stores. We don't know if they're going to have their licenses or not, but like go check them out. So those first 3 months were actually really amazing because I was able to go through on the company's dime and see like 1,000 different dispensaries.
And what were they selling? Like different flowered brands, or?
I mean, this was
brands weren't even a thing. Yeah.
No. So it was all turkey bags and jars and, you know, it was all deli style. Yeah. It was a handful of brands in the vape pens, edibles, things like, and concentrates. But outside of that, it was wild. So it was really amazing to watch that transition happen because it was like I was able to see early stage cannabis. Yeah. And then I watched it as everything kind of unfurled through the rest of 2018, which was wild. Yeah.
So for those watching, when you say all they had was turkey bags, you just kind of, turkey bags are the pounds of flour, right? And you would kind of just walk in there and just present to the shops like, this is what I got. Take your pick. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was fun. Turkey bags were the best. We had this, so also because I'd always just like called my backpack guy. I didn't have a lot of experience walking into dispensaries. Okay. So I found the nearest dispensary to me when I was living, because I was back in Santa Clarita at this point, and so I came down to the valley and I was like, found a shop and I was like, hey, I know this is weird. I'm already working for a distro, but can I work at your dispensary a couple nights a week? And they were like, yeah. So I came in. Do you remember what shop it was? I do. It was HPRC. Okay. Yes, they're still around. Different management teams. Sure, for sure. Point. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And so, one of my favorite parts was like at the end of the night, like refilling all of the mason jars with like the turkey bags from this giant safe we had in the back. You'd go in, pull out the right ones, untwist them, undo it. And you would just, it was. Everyone has their own twist too. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was a push gently. And then a twist. I twisted the bag. I didn't twist the top. I was a bag twister. Gotcha. You know? Yeah. I twist the bag, but I leave like a little opening so you can just pull to open. Oh yeah, yeah. Because I can't stand when they do the tight knots. Oh, I did tight. And it's hard to like open. Like I was bad about it. I was like, sure, ain't going nowhere. Yeah, I leave a little tab. Oh yeah, no, I was gnarly. But then you would just retwist the top and then push it through. Right. That's how you undid it. Thanks. I'll try it out next time. You're right. I liked it. So you're at the dispensary, you're at HPRC, you're going through the process. Yeah. What are one of the things that you've noticed from other maybe distributors at the time that helps you in that journey? Yeah, I mean, it was all really early days, right? And everybody was kind of running around. At one point, they switched the regs to where everything had to be pre-packed, so shelves went blank. It was crazy. What was the conversation, if you remember, like, what was the conversations at the shops with these new regs that everything needs to get, like, was like, what the fuck? Why? Everybody was losing it. Yeah? I mean, it was panic. It was sheer panic everywhere. We called it Can-apocalypse at the time, right? Because everyone's like, I can't find weed that's actually going to be okay for these new regulations. I was working with a brand that did, but there wasn't a ton. So it was like the race to find what you could, right? Yeah. So it was it was scary. I think that was like July of 2018 when they were like, no, it has to be packaged a certain type of way. Right. All of the, so it was wild. But we figured it out. Yeah. Okay. And so you're there now. We're summertime, and from there you move on to. That's when I start. Yeah, I met Rusty at Old Pal. Okay. Yeah. So I did a really good job at my distro. I sold an old brand that doesn't, I think, exist in California anymore called Honey Vape. Honey Vape was great. I mean, we're selling like 1 gram distillate cartridges for like $45 wholesale. It was insane. Okay. But I was good at it. Yeah. And so they liked me a lot. Right. And so the guys there, actually shout out Pavon, who's now doing the Oasis edibles. But he was like, hey, Rusty, I know you're looking for some sales folks. You should talk to this girl, Kendra. Yeah. So I met with Rusty in April of 2018. And then he dragged his feet a little bit, but he ended up fully hiring me in October of 2018. And I was the 4th employee at Old Pal. Nice. Okay. So then you saw this, and Old Pal at the time was the value brand. Yeah. Right? They were the value brand. They saw a need in the market, and that's what we kind of touched on, right? I came from Lowell, and Lowell saw the need of the pre-roll market. The owner was, he was a shop owner, and as you knew, working at these shops, everyone was making their own pre-rolls, and so they had the idea and kind of just went through with that. And I was talking to someone else about this. I was actually talking to Jesus about it, with brands early on found a market hold that needed a void, and then just that time took off.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was selling eighths for a lot of money. I mean, they were expensive. To find a legal eighth, it was out of control. So yeah, it was really exciting to be like, this is like old school. Like you can find an eighth for a really decent price. It was like sub $20 out the door or something like that.
So how was that for you then, coming in as employee number 4? I'm going to assume you took on a lot of the sales role while Rusty and his maybe partner were kind of figuring out the other logistics of running a brand. Yeah. What were some of the challenges early on that you were facing with this new industry?
So a lot of people didn't trust the weed. They were like, why is it so cheap?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you're a brand new brand, they just don't know who you are. And this industry tends to be very wary of people that they don't know.
Yeah.
So that's always a little bit tough. But I had these little postcards made that was, because all we had were eighths, right? And it was an eighth wholesale price, and that was pretty much it. And so I just grabbed a bunch of samples, and I had these postcards, and I would go up to the receptionist. This was before, when you didn't necessarily need a appointment. Yeah. Back in the day, which wasn't that long ago.
Right. Just when you really think about it.
Kill me with these friggin' appointments.
Yeah.
But anyways, so you didn't used to need an appointment all the time. You could just walk into a shop and be like, and I would go up to the glass and I would take my postcard with the receptionist sitting there right there and be like, boom. And I was like, I have eighths for $7.50, like wholesale. I'm like, can I talk to your buyer? And they were like,
what? Say that again.
What?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. You heard me right. Go get your buyer. And they were like, okay. And so they would run to the back, and I would have samples on me, and
sure,
we made it happen. I mean, it was an incredible amount of growth. That first year was unbelievable. It was just eighths. Some of the batches were better than others, and we were kind of a little scrappy figuring out where to get this weed from. And then later on, partnerships came through that were great, but yeah, it was scrappy, and we had some bad batches out there. The hula cheese will haunt me until I die. But there was some really great strains too, and that was kind of what put us on the map. We were that fun kind of like throwback vibe.
Yeah.
We hired on the marketing team, and they did a great job at really giving this whole like shareability messaging that really resonates with most people who smoke weed.
Right.
So it was wonderful. It was a great time.
Was there any red flags that you saw coming down the pipeline? Like,
it wasn't until later.
It wasn't until later.
Yeah. Those first few years were great. I mean, we got a little carried away at one point and thought everybody needed 0.3. We called them vacation vapes.
Okay.
So the market didn't need it. It was... And it was literally right before VapeGate. So I don't know if you guys remember this, but VapeGate was gnarly. Everybody was like, vapes are going to kill your lungs. You're going to die.
Right.
Don't touch vapes. And literally we had just launched these vapes, and I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I think we did the same too. Yeah.
Idea.
Yeah.
But we started coming out with more products and things like that. Some of them were good. Some of them were not as good. And it's okay,
Yeah.
Yeah. At one point, I think it was the summer of 2019, there was a huge cannabis, weed flower shortage. So we didn't have flower in 2019.
Yeah.
We only had our cartridges. So we did full vapes, like 1 grammers and half grammers. That's
right.
all we had to sell. And I was like, this is not a good idea. We're going to have our flower missing on the shelf for an entire summer. And it was kind of like that.
You're right. I do remember that now. And
painful.
It was because I know some of the farms that we worked with was like Ladybug Farms. We worked with Sweet Sister Farms. We worked with some of these like farms out there, and you're right, they didn't have much.
It was crazy. I don't remember if that was the fire year or.
I think so. It was. It was that fire year. Yeah, because I also handle like the logistics with the drivers, and it was just a headache trying to navigate them to like the right, navigation systems and like getting them safely to where they needed to get to, especially up north.
Yeah.
Because that was always the challenge, was up north.
Yeah.
That's where it really like hit. But you're right. The fires even up along the valley here was pretty bad.
Yeah. It was a rough year for all of us.
So you helped build Old Pal, and now you just, and then from there you've made a leap to a different brand. Was that because of around that time frame there was a massive layoffs? Is it because your choice? Like, what was that decision like, and why was that decision made for you and your family?
Yeah, so I left on my own in May of last year.
Okay.
So this was before the layoffs happened, because there were a couple of rounds of layoffs after I left.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wasn't part of those.
Sure.
I decided to go in another direction. I have one of the guys that I used to work with at the A-Team agency is friends with the founder of Cherry World.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting. I had been, with Old Pal for just under 4 years, and, things were going okay, but things were getting tough. It was like we got past the 2020, like beautiful 2020 that everybody had, where everyone was feeling really good about themselves.
Yeah.
And then things got rough.
Right.
And you're like, what is happening? Why is this happening to me? The roller coaster. And I was sort of looking to get into the premium space either way. I thought, I really like premium weed. This would be an interesting new challenge for me. I've only been in the value space, so like I'm down. And then it was great because what I was presented with Cherry World was like, we're going to take skateboarding culture.
Got it.
Premium flower. And I was like, that's perfect. So I'm like, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So it was more of an opportunity for me to like try something new,
Okay.
So I was excited.